fantastic to be here. I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about something that's been very close to my heart, I suppose, for the last 3 years. It started off as a 2-year research master's with the National College of Art and Design. I suppose I came from industry to talk to my tutor, Dr. Garota Crahur, and I didn't really know what I was going to study. I just wanted to do something that would benefit people or benefit society. And it was suggested to look at furniture for education. So at the start, I really did start from scratch, looking at all types of education, adult, secondary and primary. And what I noticed is I was just looking for similarities between all the types of education. It was quite apparent that people are asked to sit at desks for long periods of time, on chairs, in partial discomfort, or sometimes in a lot of discomfort. The problem is we're asking young kids from 4, 5, 6 years of age to get used to sitting down in, I suppose, bad posture for long periods of time. And they'll do this for a long time in their life. We're now sitting in offices for long periods of time. And I suppose it really opened up my eyes to the problems associated with long-term sitting. That's a typical view of an Irish primary school. I suppose on the outside it looks quite untidy until you really delve in. Kids are actually quite organised, but they have so much stuff. It's quite frightening. They have lots and lots of books. They have lots of stuff on their desk. They're using plastic boxes on the floor, which really clogs up the space. It's very hard to walk around. Looking at the types of chairs that are on the market at the moment, it's very, very stagnant. There's very little innovation happening in the field. And what we're seeing is, I suppose, everybody's focusing on sitting at right angles, sitting at 90 degrees. There's very little height adjustment. There's no such thing as an average school child. The height's very much so. Most of the chairs are very crude. They're made to be stackable. Stackability seems to be one of the main issues that teachers and specifiers are concerned with, even though you very rarely see chairs stacked high. You see them stacked on desks at the end of the day. But it shouldn't, well, I'm not saying it shouldn't be one of the main issues. Surely comfort should be one of the main issues for school children. Similarly with desks, again, very little innovation. The desks are all, well, for the majority, horizontal. They have some storage facilities on them. We see some terrible examples of what goes on. You see some canteen furniture coming in just down here. It's very hard for a student to sit in on this type of desk here. In one of the schools I went to, one of the school children was going home with bruised legs every day because the desk was too low for him. I suppose this is a typical example of how we're told to sit. In actual fact, what we see is students get into terrible postures and they'll hold that posture for a long period of time. They'll slouch over their work. And what I learned is that I suppose primary school is all about learning the cognitive functions, learning to read, write, hand-eye coordination. Arts and crafts are very important to school children. And they're quite intent on getting that work done. But they can't really do it because their work is at a terrible position for them. And they will pull themselves into all types of positions and postures to get to that work. For school children, there's an optimum visual distance, which is roughly 300 millimetres or a foot away from their head. And they will do everything they can to try and get their head close to their work. Looking at right angle sitting, I suppose, for a long period of time, we've been told to sit at right angles. And when we do, as we've seen in schools, people slouch over a lot. There's a lot of problems associated with that, especially for school children, where they have larger heads than usual. It's quite heavy. They have heavy rib cages. It tends to put a lot of weight on their digestive system. And they get very little, I suppose. You get a lot of muscle atrophy around the back and the core skeletal muscles. When you sit like this, you really do become redundant from the shoulders down, and you don't tend to move for long periods of time. And that's a problem for children who are still growing. But there's some new research, I can't remember what year it was, from researchers in Scotland and Canada, who were saying that they use positional MRI scanners to monitor positions in 90-degree postures, slouch position, and open posture. And it kind of correlates with research I was following from A.C. Mandal in Denmark. And his theory was sitting on horseback is one of the most beneficial postures you can have. Where you're open, your legs are separated slightly, you're in a neutral balanced position so you can really move around a lot easier. You're sitting higher than normal. And I suppose we've seen a lot of furniture in the office by large corporations focusing on the recline posture in order to get that open posture. I don't think that's really possible for school children. And as well as that, when you sit in a reclined posture, you tend to relax and not move your core muscles. And for kids, I think that's important. This is some of, I suppose, the standards that have been brought out lately. They're relatively new standards, EN 1729, and they're quite comprehensive. The problem, I think, is that some companies that are going back and readdressing their furniture are tackling it from just, I suppose, a height perspective, and they're still endorsing 90-degree postures. I started developing a theory based on work that had been done in the college by my own tutor, Dr. Garota Crahur, who focused a PhD research on orchestral seating for musicians. And he really went into depth, I suppose, for 5 or 6 years, looking at the postural requirements of all different types of musicians, which I suppose there's a huge variety of positions required by musicians. They're very fussy about the type of seating they have. They want it to feel grounded the whole time. And his work really, I suppose, pinpointed very important aspects for me about open posture and feeling correct on the chair. Based on his line of research and the equitilt seat, I developed 2 concepts, one based on a saddle type seat, one on the equitilt, which is, I suppose, has 2 angles on the seat pan. And I found it very easy to get kids to sit just on the chair and look prim and proper. And I wanted to see how it was going to look when you brought it into a classroom. I wanted to see how kids reacted on a standard type of desk. So on their current furniture, you can see them getting into terrible postures. They maintain that posture for long periods of time. I went into the class and just monitored them. They really do hold that position for a long period of time, and it's quite frightening to see when you actually do sit down and measure the angles. I was confident that the new type of seat would rectify all that, but obviously it didn't. I was using the standard desk, trying to give them height adjustment, and it actually compounded the issue. When you allow kids to sit higher in desk, all they do is they just slouch over more. I did take some positives from that. I really was fond of what the saddle type seat could do, so I went back and started sketching and developing new ideas. I was fond of the idea of a sloped work surface. From the kids themselves, they were on about armrests and shoulder rests and trying to prop themselves onto the desk when they're reading and writing. So they really had some really positive ideas. They were mad about drinks holders and fridges underneath their seats. And I started developing a saddle type seat, and as ugly as it is, it was quite comfortable. But I got the feeling that it was never really going to take off. Saddle seats exist. They're in healthcare all the time. We see them they're quite common product. They're not selling very well. And I think there's a reason for that. They are a niche product. What I was looking for is something that functioned like a saddle seat when you sat at the appropriate height. So I wanted to find something that functioned like a saddle seat, but looked like a traditional seat and would function when you sit quite low as well. And I came upon an idea that I currently have a patent on, whereby the front part of the seat is flexible. The front middle part of the seat acts as a rigid pommel, so it stabilizes you on the seat and functions like a saddle. The idea is when you sit high in the chair, it deforms into a saddle type seat. When you sit low in a chair, it continually, I suppose, supports the underside of your legs and gives you a positive feedback underneath your legs. So you're kind of encouraged to pedal the chair. It always maintains comfort. You're not asked to sit in a symmetrical way. You can move about as you want. I tested it out in schools, and again, the kids got into absolutely terrible postures when they dropped the desk down low. I had a slope surface, and I thought I was going to be the end of it. But what I noticed is, as soon as I allowed kids to sit high in the chair, they really started opening their posture, and they wanted to raise their chair more. What I found is that if you dropped the desk in quite low and give them, I suppose, a slope surface, they dropped their chair. Even the larger kids dropped their chair when they had the choice to, because they wanted to get their heads close to their work. And I think that's one of the fundamental learnings I took away from that study. So I was fascinated with the amount of flex that a chair seat should have. I took it back into the workshop. I was trying to remove material as well, because when you do sit in a saddle type seat, there's a lot more heat build-up. As well on the desk, storage for pencil cases and pens, water bottles became important. So I included a storage trough in the back of the desk. But as well as that, I noticed that kids don't really use the full depth of their seat, or of their desk. They actually only use a small front section because they bring their work close. So the rest of the desk is mainly used for storing stuff. So what I included was, from section A to B, is an extendable footprint for the desk where you can balance a book and read from the book when you're copying work. So it extends the footprint of the desk beyond what a normal desk would be. From section C to B, we have a flat surface that we can develop something like an accessories tray that can be added onto the desk. So you can detach it, you can include water bottle trays or Lego trays. So here we see, I suppose, 2 concepts. One would be a drinks holder, pen tray. The second would be something like a Lego tray. Who's to say the kids should be sitting down when they're being creative and when they're building Lego blocks? Why can't they stand at the back of a desk that's normally higher anyway? It's at standing height, and build Lego bricks. Another idea would be to go to an arts and crafts supplier and say, look, give me a tray that can be removable, stackable, washable. You can include paints, waters, brushes, and you can take it away and stack it. It's nice and neat. I took the next concept back into the schools and got some really, really positive feedback. And initially I wanted to introduce the furniture to the kids, and that's what you're seeing here. After the introduction period of about a half an hour per every 2 students, I brought it into the classroom with 2 video cameras and left the room because I didn't want to influence the results in any way. What I found is that kids really opened up their posture. They were given the choice of the desk height and the seat height to choose, and they really wanted to get up out of their standard of kind of height of chairs. And it was actually amazing to see the age of kids. These are 8, 9-year-olds, maybe 10-year-olds from 3rd class, and they really did sit well above adult height, especially with the desk. The desks tended to start at about 780 mil from the elbow rest to the front part of the desk and work upwards, which is well above office height. So this, I suppose, is the final ergonomic chart that I produced. It's all about opening posture. You can see the 2 optimum visual distances, one for close work, one for copying. I mean, kids can read from a blackboard at a distance, so they have no problem when they're copying. It does extend the footprint of the desk. That's the final design. It's fully height adjustable. You can see that there's material moved from the seat pan as well. On the desk itself, there's an orange on the desk surface. That's a soft rubberized removable surface. So every year or every 2 years you can come back and there's a return of revenue, I suppose, for anybody interested in the business aspect of it. You can see the accessories tray fits on nicely. It can be moved along. It can be interchanged. This is the seat pan. It flexes down. The middle part stays solid, so it supports you at all times. And I did find in the last study I did that once we got the amount of flex right in the chair, kids really did want to move their legs, and it brought the lower part of their body really into play, which I think is a really important thing. There's a lot of illnesses associated with long-term sitting at the moment, and I suppose it really does build up over time. People are now suffering from illnesses at 15 and 16 that they used to suffer, that grandparents used to suffer with. One of the things I found from the testing is that when you bring an office-style chair into a classroom, kids automatically drop the chair automatically. Like, I mean, it's just kind of a play thing for kids. So I wanted a safety release and the height mechanism. You can't accidentally drop this chair. You have to get off it. And by pivoting the seat by the arm here, you can drop it to whatever height you want, and then it relocates into position. That's the final design. I exhibited it in 2008 in NCAD. I'm based in an office in Cork at the moment, where I'm developing the product further. It's come on a lot since then. This is the latest chair. I've removed the holes in the chair for toolability, but the core function remains. It's fully height adjustable. The seat still flexes. That's the latest school desk. Instead of having 1 reading ledge now, you have 3 positions you can balance a book from. I think it's a little more friendly to make and to produce. And let's take it from there. Thank you very much.